Alright, so in this video, we're going to do a tutorial using Game Creator and Unity. And what I want to show you how I've approached doing scene transitions and having the player move to different scenes. And you might have this in your game where you might have like a village. And in this village, you have multiple locations. And when you go into a door from one house, you might want to return outside that house and go into a different one, or a shop, or any type of location. So what we're going to do is show you how that can work. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit play here and just show you what the scene looks like. All right, so I have my player, and right now he doesn't do anything. And the goal is each one of these locations is going to take us to a different scene. Okay. All right, and so let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing we want to do is create a trigger. And I'm going to go to Game Creator, and then I'm going to create trigger. Okay. All right. Now this trigger, the goal of this trigger is so that we can trigger an action to send us to another location. So the first thing I want to do is, instead of on start, I'm going to change the trigger to be an object, and we're going to do on player enter. Okay, and then I'm going to add a component, a box collider, and then I'm going to change it to is trigger. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to change the size to something like this, and let's go ahead and move that over where we need it. Okay, so I'm going to move that there. Okay, perfect. So we have a trigger there, and now we need an action. So when our player hits this trigger, we're going to transition to another scene. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. All right, so I'm going to double click actions, and it's going to take us to this particular object with the actions component. I'm going to hit add. Okay, all right. And so the first thing I want to do is assign a number to a location. Or a certain variable, and I'm going to do that by going to variables and go to variable number. And right now I have a location variable, but if you don't, what you want to do, yours is going to be empty, so you can just go manage variables, and you would just hit this plus key. So I'll just go ahead and get rid of that, but what you do is hit this plus key, and you can just hit location. You can name this variable anything you want, actually. And I'm just going to go down, and the type of variable is going to be a number, and we're going to leave this at 0. Okay. All right. So you can go ahead and close that window. So now you go back to your action. You can go ahead and click on location, and we're going to change this value to be 0. All right. So now when the player actually runs into this particular trigger, it's going to make that value 0. Okay, that's what it's going to do. It's going to set that value to be 0. Okay, so we also need to go to a scene. So I'm going to go down, and where it says scene, I'm going to click scene, and then we're going to load scene. So you don't want to do these two. We just want to do the basic load scene. Okay. And what you want to do is put in the scene name. Now I already have some scene names here. I have everything already set up. So you would definitely just use whatever scene name that you're using. I'm going to put in room 1. Okay, perfect. All right. And so now we have a variable change, and we have a load scene. All right. So that should at least get us going. And what next thing I want to do to keep everything very organized, I'm going to go ahead and rename this trigger. I'm going to name it Scene Changer. All right. Enter. All right, great, perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and hit play and make sure that our player is transitioning to the scene. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and move, and when I get the player over here, as you can see, it transitioned us to the room 1. And you can tell it's green in this room, so it makes sure that we know we're in the proper room. Now, of course, there's no player in the scene and we can't do anything yet. So, all right, perfect. All right, so next what we want to do is actually create a player spawn point. Okay, we want to basically create the location where the player is going to return to when he leaves that room that he's in. Okay, so what I'm going to do is right click and go to game creator, and I'm going to go click on trigger. Okay, and then with that I'm going to click on trigger, and you look here in your scene, you're going to see something here. It's like a little arrow. We're going to create a marker. Okay, so we have a trigger and then we have a marker. Okay, all right, and then I'm going to go ahead and take that and move that over here, and we can kind of bring it down where you think you need it. And I also want to rotate it to where it's pointed in this direction. So ideally when the player leaves that location, we want him pointing or looking in a particular location or direction. All right, perfect. All right, so the first thing that we want is, you want to think about this for a second. So the goal is we need to get our player here. So when this scene starts, we want our player to be here. Okay, so we need some conditions that need to be met. So what I'm going to do is go to my trigger, and I'm going to click on the button here that says create a condition slot. So I'm going to create a condition here. All right, and then it's going to create a object. So I'm going to go ahead and double click that. Now within your conditions, I'm going to click on add clause. Now the condition you need to do is a variable condition. So we need to tell it if the variable number is 0, then we want to do something. So what we want to do is put our player here. So the best way to do that is actually something called teleport. So we want to teleport our player to a position. So we need to change this. We don't want it to just be any position, but a specific one. We want to change it to the marker. So we're going to take this, change this to transform, grab our marker, put it here, okay? And we want to click on rotate. And that should make our player rotate in the direction that the marker is facing, okay? So again, when this trigger starts, it's going to check for a condition. It's going to check to see what number the location is set to. And when it says 0, it's going to move it to this marker. Okay, so when I hit play, it should check that, and automatically, instead of starting here, our player should be moved right here and facing in this direction. So let's see how that works. Perfect. So now when the game starts, or when this scene starts, our player is transported right to this location, just like so. So now what we want to do is go ahead and rename our trigger. So we want to name this trigger. I mean, you can name it whatever you want, but I'm going to name it spawn player. Okay, so now we have a scene changer and we have our spawn player. Okay, and that's great. So another thing I want to do is actually move this player out of view. So typically you don't need this player here. If this was like your game level, you don't necessarily want to see him in the scene. So what I'm going to do is move my player out of view, and you can put him anywhere you want. And I have a little handy dandy block under here. So I just put that player there, and that's it. So now the illusion is when you hit play, that's going to be where this player starts. Okay, and so that works out pretty good. Now, of course, as soon as we go into this room, we can't do anything because we haven't set up another room to work. All right, but before we do that, I think it's real important to make sure that we can reuse what we have here. So what I'm going to do is turn the scene changer and the spawn player into a prefab. So what I'm going to do is go into prefabs, and I'm going to take the scene changer and click and drag it and put it here. And then I'm going to right click it, and I'm going to go to create, and I'm going to turn it into a variant. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the spawn player. Right click and turn it to a variant. Okay, and so now since those are there, I'm going to go ahead and delete those because we don't need those there. We're going to use the variants instead. So now when you have a scene and you're ready to put in a scene changer, you can go scene changer, boom, put that one there, and then you have your spawn player, put that one there. Okay, good. And so just to make sure everything is still working, that's still working as it should be. Perfect. All right. So next thing we want to do is go into another scene, and let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to hit save, and let's go into another scene. So scene, and then let's go into the green room, room 1. All right. So now in this room, I already have a player here. And just to show you, you can just delete this and you can actually just hit player, and there's your player there. And I'm going to go ahead and just rotate them. Doesn't really matter, but I'm just going to rotate them, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull the player down, and then I'm going to hit play. There's nothing really going on because why? We don't have a camera in here. We don't have anything going on. But if you move the player up, you'll see that this player is here and moving, but he can't transition to another room, and there's no camera movement. And we don't necessarily need a camera movement for this room, but it's just to show you that we do have a player in here moving, okay? And he just starts right there, okay? So he starts technically where he is, so we're going to change that very quickly. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to my prefabs. We're going to put the room changer in, the scene changer. We're going to put it right there in that spot, and I'll move it back just a little bit. And then I'm going to put the spawn player here, and as you can see, it's facing that direction. So I'm going to bring it up, and then I'm just going to rotate it, because we want him to look that way. Okay. And so this particular spawn player, if we look at our conditions, it's going to be 0. Okay. So if this spawn's location is going to be a 0 location, just keep that in mind, because that's how you're going to be able to dictate where you want your player to end up. Okay. So this location is going to be 0. Okay. So if I hit play, our player should move to that location. I'm going to go ahead and move our player out of view. Okay. And so now there's no player, and let's hit play and see if that works. Perfect. So now our player is right where it needs to be. Okay. Works great. And if we hit the scene changer, we haven't changed the scene yet, so it's not going to take us where we think. As you can see right here, if I click on the actions, it's going to room 1, so it really would have just put us right back where we were. But what we want to do is change this to the spawn room, or the room hub. So I'm going to go ahead and go back there, and I'm just going to simply change this to room hub. Okay. Now you see these little blue accents here. That just means that your scene changer has a change and you can override it, but you don't want to do that because it'll change it for all of them. So at this point, you want to leave that alone. Now you can choose different things, and maybe we can do a video about specifically how like prefabs and variants work. But for this video, let's just keep it simple and just know not to make any particular changes to that or override anything yet. All right. So now that we have that, what we want to do is go ahead and change. We have that there, so we should be good. Let's go ahead and hit play. And so now, if we go here, it takes us into the hub and it puts us right where we need to be. And ideally, if we go back, it puts us right where we need to be. Perfect. And so, as you can see, we're able to put the player right where they are supposed to be, as if they're leaving a home or a house in a game or a location or anything where you're transitioning from one scene to the next. Okay, so now let's set that up for all of them so that we can go into all these different locations. All right, so now that we're good on this room, let's go ahead and go to another room. So I'm going to go ahead and save, and I'm going to hit save project. And I'm going to go to room 2. And in room 2, it's a different color. So what I'm going to do is go to my prefabs. I'm going to add the scene changer. And then I'm going to add my spawn player. And I'm going to rotate it around just like so. Okay. And we're going to leave this to be 0. So, and again, what I mean by that is our scene changer is going to check as long as its value is 0. It's going to check where whatever that value is, it's going to put it here. And that's what that means. Okay. And so we need a player in this room now, and we don't have one. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to create a player. And I'm going to put them underneath the space out of view. And I like to create a little place for them to be, just in case something's not working. We'll know that they're not falling through space. Okay. All right, perfect. So now when we hit play, the player will be here. Let's make sure the room is going where it's supposed to. So the scene changer needs to not go to room 1. It needs to actually go to room hub. And we want to copy actions, room hub. That one's good. And so I'm gonna hit save. And I'm gonna hit play. Let's see if that's working. Cool, perfect. So now we have room hub here. It takes us there, and the reason it takes us there is because we haven't set up the marker for this particular room. So let's go back to the hub and set that up. And I hope all this is starting to make sense on how it works. All right, great. All right, so now we're in the hub. So now what we're gonna do is put a scene changer for each space. So let's go to prefabs, scene changer. One for this space and one for that space. Okay. And for this scene changer, this one here, we want to make it go to room 2. And for this one, we want to make it go to room 3. We haven't set up room 3 yet. That's okay. And then we need a spawn player variant. So we're going to put that here. And this is where everything will make sense, because what we want to do is for this particular spawn player, we want the conditions to say, hey, if the location is 1, put it here, you see? And if this location is 2, put the player here. Now, the question is, how will it know which location, and when does the location change? The location is changing when you enter through the scene changer. So in regards to these scene changers, this particular scene changer is going to change it to 0. That's because on the other end, when you go into the room, that marker is the 0 marker. Okay, so I'm gonna hit save. And I'm gonna go back into our room 2 here. Okay. So if I go back into room 2, this scene changer here needs to match up. So now we just need to change this from 0 to, let's see, 1. Is it 1 or 2? Yeah, I think it's 1. So I'm gonna make that 1. And then I'm gonna go back into the hub and verify that this particular 1 is going to be 1. Exactly, 1. Okay. All right, great, perfect. And so if I hit play, let's see if that is working. All right. Now the reason our player starts here is because the game, the actual variable starts at 0, and this location is 0. So ultimately what you could do for your game is, instead of having, say, 0 as your default, you can always have 0 as your default, but you can have your certain spaces be actual numbers as opposed to that. So, but that's a choice only you can make. So let's go ahead and go into this room. All right, perfect. We're in here, and there we go. And so now we're able to go in those 2 different rooms and end up exactly where we want. And it's almost pretty seamless. All right, and so let's set up our last one. Okay, and so that one should be our room 3. And then our scene changer, this particular one should be spot 2. Our condition be 2. Okay, and I'm just gonna hit save, and then let's go into the other location. So we're gonna go into room 3, and let's go ahead and do the same thing we did before by setting the scene changer up, moving that in place, and we're gonna make this action. This is going to change its location variable, right? Location variable to 2 when you enter that. And then we're gonna have to spawn player here, and we're gonna leave that one at 0. Make sure that's faced in the right direction. Okay. All right, and so that should be working. So now we need a player in the scene. Rotate. And again, the rotation doesn't matter, but I just tend to do that just because. Okay, and I'm just gonna go ahead and create my cube underneath to stay consistent. All right, cool. All right, perfect. All right, so now we have that all ready to go. All right, and now it looks like I had something selected when I brought my player in, and that's fine. I'll just move that out of there. All right, cool. So when we hit play, we should have our player here. All right, cool. So player is working. Let's go in here. And so it took us somewhere else, and that's probably because we had the scene not set up. Scene changer not set. So it's still going to room 1. And of course you want to change it to room, I think it's hub. Let's make sure room hub. All right. All right, so we're good there. So now let's go play. Boom. And so our player is right there, and we want to go into the shop and buy some things. And then we could leave, and then now we want to go buy some weapons. And and there. All right. And so that's pretty much how I approach scene changing. I'm sure there might be some other ways to go about it, but I found that to be effective and it works actually pretty well. All right. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I always hang out in the Game Creator Discord. So everyone's super friendly there. So if you have any questions about Game Creator, you should definitely check that out. They also have awesome tutorials on the Game Creators YouTube page, so you should definitely check that out. So I hope this was useful, and I will talk to you guys later. And of course, always remember, never give up and keep moving forward. Peace.